Well, this morning we found out the latest inflation figure, the rate at which prices are rising, and that figure actually dropped to 2.5% in December from 2.6% in November. It comes as the pound is plummeting, the cost of government borrowing hit a 16-year high. And
Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, has responded to the latest figures, saying she will fight every day to improve people's living standards. And the Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Darren Jones, joins us now from Westminster. Darren Jones, inflation still above target, service sector inflation still over 4%. There is a persistent inflation challenge for Britain compared to other countries. Is that why we've seen this big rise in our long-term interest rates, which has caused all that market turbulence, may mean that you're no longer on track to meet your fiscal rules?
Good morning. I think there are probably three different bits in your question, Ed. I mean, the first one on inflation, it's good news that it's coming down and it's around the target of 2%, but clearly we've got more to do. As the Chancellor said, we're fighting every day to help working people have more money in their pockets, and we know the cost of living is still a challenge for many families across the country. You alluded to some of the underlying factors in inflation. It's good, for example, that core goods and service inflation is starting to come down. Those were particularly sticky over the last few quarters. So that's generally good news, and it's much better than when it was spiking at kind of 10, 11% a couple of years ago when everybody was struggling with their energy and housing costs. You then asked me about cost of government borrowing. Yep, that's gone up. Obviously, as a minister, I don't give a running commentary on global markets, but it is an issue affecting many developed countries around the world. But the UK is particularly exposed because we have low growth and high debt. That's what we inherited from the last Conservative government. But it's why the Chancellor in this government is very clear with our job to deal with that, which is why our fiscal rules, which was your third point, are non-negotiable. Day-to-day spending, public services, will have to be paid for by tax receipts, and public services will have to live within their means. And where we do borrow to invest in the country, overall, the country's debt has to be falling as the size of the economy. Those fiscal rules are non-negotiable, right, and that's an important part of our approach to stability in the economy.
So yesterday, the Chancellor in the House of Commons was blaming global conditions. Over the last year, interest rates have gone up by 35 basis points in Germany, 70 in America, but 100 in the UK. We have been hit harder than other countries with these big rising long-term interest rates. Why is the UK in such trouble?
Well, as I say, the economy that we inherited is in a mess. I mean, I think people at home know that. That's part of the reason they voted for change at the last election. You can't deny the facts. We inherited a very high level of debt as a country from the last government, where they were borrowing to pay day-to-day bills. That's something that we will not be doing under this Labour government. We had a very poor growth performance in the economy coming into office, and we've started to do the work, but we've got more work to do to improve that. And that means that we're starting with a very difficult starting position. But our plan for change that the Prime Minister has set out has given us very clear directions about what we're going to deliver over the course of this government, and that is our focus.
Can I ask you one more question about public spending? The Chancellor, the Prime Minister, said no return to austerity. The current plans have, outside health and defence, austerity cuts in public spending, 1.4% a year cuts in public spending. You're now suggesting you may have to cut even further for policing, for prisons, for local government. There are reports in the newspapers that you are planning a novel approach. I've been involved in lots of spending reviews. I've never heard of this before. You're going to get groups of cabinet ministers in a room, and if they don't offer up big enough cuts, you're going to ask them to tell other cabinet ministers what cuts they're going to have to make. It sounds like the Hunger Games. Is this a joke, or is it actually what you're going to do?
So, Ed, that's not what we're doing. Let me just tell you what we're doing. I mean, for the first time in 17 years, we're doing what's called a zero-based review. So every department is having to look at every pound that they spend and make sure that it's aligned with the priorities of this government, the public's priorities set out in our plan for change. So those group discussions that we're having, we're calling them clusters in the Treasury. Those group discussions is where secretaries of state from different departments have to offer up parts of what their department does in order to deliver the outcomes that we expect to be delivered for the public. And that's about them getting them to work together and to make sure that they're prioritising the over £1 trillion that we spend every year as a country on the people's priorities and not things that have just been carrying on for years that are not a priority for this government.
If they don't offer up big enough cuts, they have to tell other departments what they're going to cut. Sounds like a game show.
It's not about cuts. I mean, we could get you to host it, Ed. But look, it's not about cuts. It's about the departments working with each other to make sure that they are putting their money behind the levers that need to be pulled in order to deliver the outcomes in the plan for change on living standards, house building, police numbers, and making sure that energy bills are secure in our country and that children get the best start in life. I think everybody at home would recognise that it's the right thing for government to do to make sure that taxpayers' money is being spent in the best possible way, that we're reforming our public services and that we're delivering on their priorities, and that's what we're doing.
You said the Chancellor has responded by saying she will fight every day for working people to keep more money in their pockets. In fact, the quote we've got is fight every day to improve people's living standards. There are plenty of pensioners, millions, who have lost the winter fuel allowance under this Labour government, who don't feel that that has improved their living standards. You made that important distinction. You're on the side of working people. Pensioners obviously worked all their lives, but now have had this massive cut. Yesterday we spoke to a woman called Elaine. She was confused about whether she was eligible for pension credit. Surprise, surprise, within half an hour of her interview here on this programme, DWP rang her up to say, you are, and we're going to pay money for the winter fuel allowance. We were inundated by people saying, well, what about the people who can't get onto Good Morning Britain? How many people eligible for pension credit still waiting to hear if they're going to get their money?
So look, I don't know the answer to your specific question, but you're right to point out that we encourage pensioners across the country, predominantly those that are on lower incomes, to check whether they're eligible for pension credit. They can do that from local services or the council or by talking to the government directly. We've been funding a national campaign and getting information out to people to help them to do that.
But you don't know how successful that's been.
Well, we know that the campaign has been successful. So we've had, I think, about 120% increase in applications for pension credit,
and then you automatically finding out and getting the money, of course, that's important.
Yeah, I agree, but you have to apply for that. And as I say, there are services in place to help people, and I would encourage pensioners to do it. But I would also just say on your question about pensioners, you know, this government's committed to the triple lock, the only group of people in the country that
it doesn't. You know what the inflation means. Prices are rising. We know that energy bills have gone up. People like Elaine say that triple lock commitment does not offset losing that £200. It means that people are too afraid to put the heating on this winter. Money that's coming in the spring is not helping now. And having the government tell them that because they're going to get this increase in the pension, that means that they're going to feel better off now, it's just insulting to people.
Well, look, you will know that the majority of people will pay their energy bills through the year on a direct debit. You're allowed to go into negative numbers in the winter and build it up in the summer when you're using less energy. But I have to say, the triple lock is a generous protection for pensioners. It's one that we are committed to, and it means that pensioners get an increase in their pension in line with either inflation, and so the cost of their bills on average.
We know how the triple lock works. It's not working for people this winter. I want to ask one more question, Darren Jones, because when we ran the story about Elaine yesterday and pensioners, a lot of people got in touch to say, what about those of us on benefits, particularly personal independence payments, the disability benefit? Is that within your line of sight, either changing the rules for eligibility or a cut?
So on welfare, the welfare bill, our key premise is that for people who can work, we want to support them to get back to work. So what that means is that there are many people in the country who are waiting for appointments in the NHS or not getting the support they need for mental health challenges, who are able and wanting to go back to work, but they're not currently able to get the support that they need. So we're taking a number of interventions to support people to get back to work and dealing with the backlog in the NHS, changing some of the rules about the support payments they get to help them get back into work, and working with employers to create those opportunities. But
could that mean that people's payments could be cut?
No, it means that we're going to support people to get the appointments they need and to find the work that they need, which is better for them and better for the economy. But look, where people have long-term disabilities and challenges, the PIP system will continue to be in place and will continue to support people. That's right and proper. But we do know that there's a lot of people who want to go to work but need certain interventions from healthcare professionals that they're not able to get access to. And that's why Wes Streeting, our Health Secretary, and Liz Kendall, our Work and Pension Secretary, are working so strongly together to make sure that we get the help to people who need it and then help them get back to work to create the stability and opportunity they need in
Darren
their own
Jones,
lives.
thanks very much indeed, Chief Secretary to the Treasury.